Hi everybody, I'm Diane Brady. I'm here with Rob Enslin, who is the Co-CEO of UiPath. You're now 1 year in the job, Rob. How's it being Co-CEO? That sometimes seems like either an incredible to have a helper or a Faustian pact. Which is it?
Diane, it's been amazing, to be honest with you. Before I decided to take the Co-CEO role at UiPath, I spent a lot of time with Daniel. If you know Daniel
Dines, yeah.
Daniel Dines, yeah, sorry. Daniel Dines does not hire anybody without spending personal time with them.
Oh, really? Is it like a personal time test, like we're going skydiving together?
He tries to figure out if culturally there's a connection, is there something that, the person and him have in common, or what connects the two of them. And so I spent a lot of time with Daniel before deciding to join UiPath.
What did you do? I'm just curious. Because that
we drank a lot of wine. I would say we drank a lot of wine. We spent a lot of time in a couple of restaurants. We spoke about each other's backgrounds in many ways, because I started as an engineer, and Daniel obviously he's an engineer. Correct? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was hired as an engineer into SAP. I was an assembler programmer in my very early days, and I actually somehow moved into sales. So Daniel and I connected, and then we spent a weekend together just talking about, where he wanted to take UiPath, his family, his vision of the future, how he loves books and war stories and understanding how people think and so on. And so we actually connected.
He is very much a cerebral leader, isn't he? He loves to talk about literature.
Exactly. Yeah.
Were there a lot of similarities in your background, did you find?
The biggest similarity, I would say, is we both came from countries which had strife, opportunity,
South
Africa and Romania. And so, we've always been kind of underdogs, if you want, and had to achieve in different markets and so on. So that kind of really connected us in many ways. He didn't come from a wealthy family. I didn't come from a wealthy family. We found ourselves together. At the end of the day, it was just we liked each other. Mm-hmm. I'd worked with co-CEOs at SAP for a long time. I'd seen the good, the bad, the ones that didn't work, the ones that worked. And I kind of knew that if we spent enough time together, I would know whether I could work with Daniel. And the thing that was important for me was I'm a huge believer in diversity. So the hard thing with diversity is not that we're the same, that we're different. And that if you put two things that are different together, if you can make it work, the opportunity is so much bigger than our commonalities. And so I've always strived to make that work. And Daniel is a thinker. He likes to explore the details. Kind of my background with the Germans, I guess, that understanding details, going through the details of who you are as a person, how you think, why you think, and can we make it work together. I knew pretty quickly that Daniel and I would have no issue.
So you're the yin to his yang. That's his approach. What's your approach? How would you describe it?
Yeah, I'm a pretty good listener. I try to get to hear the other person's side, and then convince them how they should do it my way.
Yeah, exactly. Good point.
Good point. But this is how you should.
Yeah.
Look, coming in, I knew that we had different strengths. Our strengths were, his strength was engineering, his strength was innovation. He was really interested in culture and ensuring that the culture of UiPath connected. And when I listened to him, I was like, that's kind of me as well. Mm-hmm. So I'm absolutely cool to have you drive that. When you look at the values of the company, the same thing, right? The values are very simple to understand. It's not very complex. People live it. And then I spent my career building companies, growing companies, fixing areas, and then evolving companies. So I knew what big looked like. And when we sat together and spoke about it, it was pretty clear that this would be a good kind of coming together of two minds.
So you felt your role was really to come in and scale
the organization,
for
sure.
And how is it? Let's reflect on the past year, because so much has happened, obviously. You come in, what did you find in terms of the opportunity, the untapped opportunity?
Yeah, so before I came in, I obviously
You've had your wine, South African wine, I hope.
I think it was French, actually.
Oh, well.
It's Daniel.
Yeah, exactly.
I studied UiPath for quite a while, and I watched the IPO happen. I saw the rise, right, and then the bit of a tail off. But I always felt that it was focused on RPA too myopic, and that the opportunity
robotic
was
process automation.
robotic process automation,
yeah.
for those that don't know, and that the opportunity was much broader. It was automation. And when I looked at the detail of the company from a technology point of view, I said, this company has an opportunity to define the category of automation, which no one has defined.
Mm-hmm.
And
what's the difference? What's the difference between RPA and automation?
Yeah, so RPA, robotic process automation, generally just automates individual processes, but doesn't know what processes, either human or business, needs to be automated because it's not functioning well in the company.
There's no intelligence overlay?
There's no intelligence in it. You have to provide it the intelligence. You have to have humans do it. And it was great in the beginning of RPA when you said, invoices don't match. Please match my invoices. Mm-hmm. But when you look at an enterprise and the beating of an enterprise, what's working? What's inefficient? How are people working in their day-to-day work? Are they working efficiently? Can we improve it? Mm-hmm. Can we provide them more time? Can we connect the time that people behave to processes and combine the two to drive outcomes? And so when I looked at that, I said, Daniel, we have an opportunity here to define that. The discovery phase in a company. Think about a doctor looking on an enterprise and saying, I need to fix these arteries because they're not operating.
So the symptoms versus the disease.
Exactly, right.
Which is interesting because that seems like a technological challenge. And is that where, say, generative AI comes in? Or is that, I don't want to start going straight to the chat GPT conversation, but that does feel like a whole other layer of technological,
yes,
innovation that hasn't been there necessarily.
So first of all, AI is absolutely transformative, and it's going to help businesses transform. It's going to help businesses innovate in a very, very meaningful way. AI has been around for a very long time. Mm-hmm. UiPath was built on AI. We have computer vision. We have been working on AI technology for the last 7, 8, 9 years. And so what ChatGPT brought to the world is an awakening of AI, an understanding where it was not a data science discussion, it was not an engineering discussion. People understood that there's an opportunity here to actually even benefit organizations even more. We've had ChatGPT or GPT in our products for quite some time already. Many of our large language models that we utilize today are based on GPT, right? We utilize them because it adds more value to the existing process or the existing AI. Simple example, you get an email coming into a company. The email says, I'm waiting for my production. When will my production arrive? I need it on Thursday. AI can read the email, we can read the email, understand what it's saying, we can take out bills of materials, IDs, addresses, then we can go look in the systems and say, is it a real customer?
Right.
Is this one of our customers? Was the order actually placed? Can we match the order?
This is before any humans even
before
look at
any
the
human
email.
get in the loop, absolutely. And then we can validate it. Premium customer, order was placed on the production line. We can then script an email. Now, scripting an email with ChatGPT or OpenAI, by giving it tags and information, it can write a very specific email. Before sending that email out, think, human, machine, equals automation. Humans in the loop are a really important part of AI because AI has to learn all the time. So before just sending the response back to, you would stop and you would say, is this the correct email? Do I have all the right information? The information was based on these factors. These were the possible. So you're giving the user all the information on how you wrote the email, why it's relevant, and the user then decides, the human then decides whether the email is correct to send off. Over time, the human will not be needed anymore because it'll become more accurate. It actively learns.
Which is part of both the opportunity and the fear factor, obviously, that people talk about right now.
Yeah. But in the enterprise, there's two different fear factors. The human fear factor, because it's me working with AI, and I'm writing stuff, and I'm sending it out, and I'm saying, oh my gosh, that's pretty amazing.
Right. Who knew I could write poetry like that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Who knew my performance review was that good?
That's
That was
right.
unbelievable, right? But in the enterprise, we have to make certain that AI is open, it's flexible, it's secure, it's trustworthy, right? And it's not new. We've been doing this for a while. There's been GPT-3. So customers' data, where it's stored, how it's, that's our responsibility to make it. That's why humans in the loop. It's also very, very important for AI.
Well, let's step back a second again to that scaling opportunity when you talk about going from RPA to automation. So was that partly its vision, partly its execution? What exactly have you done or have you tried to do to really take UiPath and the industry from where it was a year ago to where it could be? I'm not saying you're fully on the journey yet, but what do you think? How did you?
Well, there's a couple of things that we've done. You know, when the emotion or the exuberance of ChatGPT hit the market and the excitement hit the market.
Was that good for you?
Absolutely. I think it was good for everybody because it was the moment when AI became real for lots of people. And boardrooms started to understand that there's an opportunity here to innovate. And if you think about boardrooms and what they have to do today, right? Disruption is a big factor in everybody's lives today. Every company, every enterprise is dealing with disruption. Macroeconomic conditions change. I don't know if you can call them macro anymore, but they change on a weekly basis. Mm-hmm. In order for companies to be able to deal with these kind of changes, they need technology to drive it, and automation is one of those technologies. In order for automation to actually be even more impactful, AI added to automation has a huge benefit. And so what we can do now is we can enrich the already existing AI automations at a different level, mm-hmm. right? I'll give you an example. Quest Diagnostics produce millions of tests a year. Using our document understanding, they're able to process them absolutely fast without intervention of humans and get that out. If you look at how we deal with task automation, mm-hmm. think about humans. We understand humans and how they work because we understand how they work with their laptops. Which information do they find? Why do they find that information? Where do they go to get that information? Think about the healthcare system. If you're able to help 400 or 500 nurses or physician assistants save time in the day, spend more of that time with patients, certainly the outcome's got to be better for all of us in humanity.
Well, it's interesting. So let's talk about the humanity part. Always fascinates me. So you're talking to clients right now, and I'm assuming that the savings could result in a large swath of the workforce being repurposed at the very least. Give us a vision of what this could look like, because you're 1 year into the job and you come at this with a lot of experience from SAP, you came from Google. What excites you right now? Like the average corporation that you're talking to, how is it going to look different? Say 5 years, you tell me the time frame.
Yeah, I think everything's going to happen faster than we expected.
Are we at that tipping point?
We're at that tipping point. I thought when I went to Google, the tipping point would happen, and it kind of didn't really happen.
The technology wasn't there, or the will?
Technology was absolutely there. The understanding of the technology, what it could do, it was a kind of a data science specialist type environment. Right? You needed to find the most detailed engineers to understand what could be happen. Large language models. What is that?
We weren't speaking in the language of the common
person. If you think about large language models, that is basically deconstructing human language.
Right.
It's the next word. The cat sat on the mat, and purred. Mm-hmm. The large language model is not going to start from cat and understand the cat sat on the mat. It needs to understand. So that information people did not really understand until they could actually do it themselves. And then they started to understand there's an opportunity here. So how will this help in the future, right? I don't believe that the planet's going to have a significant amount of population explosion in the future. So if I look on the one side, you have population, which is pretty much going to be flat in the future.
You think it's going to tap out at 10 billion? That's what I heard.
There's sayings between we had 8.3, I think right now. It's going to go up slightly, but it's not going to be what it was in the last 50 years.
Yeah.
Right. There's markets that are really flat. I mean, if you go to the Nordics or you go to Japan.
So you're looking at demographic trends. And you spent, 3 years of your career? I
spent 3 years in Japan.
So there's a classic example of a demographic time bomb.
Yeah, and there's an opposite factor. Technology is growing so fast. Technology is changing so fast. Technology is becoming really useful. More and more companies have to be technology savvy in order to deliver faster and faster. So you've got technology going one way, people going the other way. The real answer is, how do we drive technology to empower people so that in their day-to-day work, whether it's 8 hours or 6 hours, they're getting more out of that, and they're doing more relevant work that they really, really want to do. And that's why I always use the example of, the healthcare system. After COVID, the healthcare system's been constrained. There's no doubt, everywhere in the world. And if you go to social countries like Denmark, they cannot find nurses and physician assistants. Mm-hmm. So they're using automation to shrink down the amount of paperwork, the amount of information that nurses and physician assistants have to find. They're using automation to actually provide that information, enrich that information with real information, so that when they visit the patient, they're spending the day with patients, all day with patients. They don't need more people. That's a really important factor.
So it's interesting when you talk about this tipping point, because there is a transition period. You talk about disruption.
Yeah.
Obviously, there can be a painful period to get to where we want to go. Mm-hmm. And we're right now in the tech sector seeing a large number of layoffs, partly to position for the future, right?
Yeah.
Some of these are companies that have had record earnings. I know that you've personal experience with this. During this sort of disruption period, can you give us some sense, even as a leader yourself, how are you thinking about it in terms of right-sizing your own corporation and what you're seeing clients do specifically?
Yeah,
or customers, I guess you call them.
I believe if you look at any of the staffing companies, they would say that the manpower, the hiring is back to where it was in 2019. So there obviously was a little bit of exuberance going through the COVID.
So the bubbles burst.
Right. I'm not certain we thought there was a bubble. I think we thought that COVID would create more problems, and technology changed that. I doubt whether we would have been able to manage the pandemic the way we managed the pandemic without technology. I'm actually 100% convinced that it would have been a very different scenario.
If we hadn't been able to digitize so quickly.
Absolutely. If we hadn't been able to connect each other. I mean, if you took a project in 2019 and you said, I need the whole company to be on video every day, every 30 minutes, probably your IT department would have told you, that's a 9-month project, we need to hire X amount to do it. We did it in 24 hours, right? We started to move. I mean, with the cloud providers, they were able to move CPU power around the world, create network capacity. Social media became massive, right? Because everybody had to do it. The buying cycles changed. I mean, if you went into a Walmart parking lot, it was packed. I mean, I remember walking through my neighborhood and seeing boxes of shipments and just sitting there in awe and saying, my gosh.
Welcome to New York.
Yeah, everybody, right? And so it massively changed how companies operated. And I think that's how the technology will change in the future. We'll adapt to that. I would say AI is gonna have a really big impact, because it'll create another level of innovation through startups. There will be new companies coming up with new ideas, being able to use those large language modules. And by the way, it's not only OpenAI, right? We've got open connectors to OpenAI, to Google Vision, to AWS SageMaker. You have to provide an opportunity for all AI models.
These innovation moves in sync, right?
Yeah.
So there's, let's go back to what you're doing with UiPath, and also the way you're working with Daniel now. What differentiates the company in your mind, given the ubiquity now of the technology?
So first, I think, when you have macroeconomic conditions the way we have it, companies start to cut budgets. Everybody does. You asked the question about, the amount of headcount you need. You do that so that you make certain that your company's fit for good times and bad times, right?
Can you give us some sense of how much headcount generally you see companies cutting or being able to cut?
I mean, I would say a lot of companies have cut up to about 10%.
And that's permanent, really, because they're now being replaced with technology.
I would say it's permanent, or it's being where technology's replaced many of it, automation's replaced. But I do think those workers will come back into the workforce as another growth spurt happens, as more needs. I think the workforce has changed. The service economy is changing dramatically, and I think there will be an opportunity for everybody. I think you look at the amount of people that are employed, it continues to, unemployment continues to come down, even though we're trying to fight it. And I believe technology drives employment over time in any case. It shifts the type of employment. I use the example of, can you imagine Amazon if they had to have physical people in the warehouse for everything? We would never be able to ship. Technology drove, it's completely automated. There's absolutely a place for employees. They employ lots of people, right? But the technology to understand what you want, when to deliver it, where to fetch it, which warehouse, it's all automated through software, right? We still need a physical driver to get in the car and deliver it for us. So there's opportunity over time. It just moves into a different space. The automotive industry is another example. If you went into an automotive manufacturing facility 30, 40 years ago, it wasn't that automated. It had a couple of robotic, but it wasn't that automated. You go today, there's not many people in there. There's very few.
Redesigning entire factories, basically.
So I view that technology helps innovation, helps people understand where employment will go, and they move into different places. You could argue in our industry that ChatGPT or OpenAI or large language modules might democratize the computer and computer languages. And that would be very fascinating when everybody had an opportunity to actually write code.
The same way the internet has, basically created a zero margin cost for the cloud, I guess.
Yeah.
So if we enter the automation age, let's talk. I know we're talking to people who know UiPath, but let's say we're talking to the general population here. What looks different for you? I mean, because you're on the front lines basically of the automation age. Can you give us some sense of what's most exciting to you in terms of a scenario? You've given us some individual scenarios, but you're a leader of a company that's a leader in this space. What are we perhaps underappreciating or overhyping from where you sit?
That we have the ability with automation, think about automation in 3 phases: discovery, understanding how business processes operate without having to actually document it, understanding how humans interact with devices, computers, with systems, and then understand how communication happens, how emails, chats, tickets come at you, right? We have the ability to understand, utilizing combination of AI and automation, understand how this comes about. So when you take an example of emails coming in, 700 million emails, it's impossible for humans to deal with that. And if the humans could deal with it, they would deal with it in different ways. Everybody will read it, understand it differently, because that's how we are. We actually are not exactly the same.
Right.
With automation, we are able to understand the culture of the company that we're working with, how they talk, the company's language. We're able to determine the customer, what the customer's been doing. We can combine them, and then we can create responses in the company's language back to the customer that's extremely accurate. So the discovery process is really important. And then to build automations where Diane, can build automation, I could build automation, my finance department can build automation, supply chain can build automations on the fly to solve problems. Classic example. You all of a sudden get an influx of claims coming at you. COVID was a great example. New York State, 1.2 million claims 1 week. Humans are unable to actually deal with that level of volume in a level of accuracy. Going through with automation, we were able to determine that there were $12 billion of risk associated with those claims and manage that in a week. So that's an example of automation at scale that you can turn on in an environment that is changing dramatically. And then the ability to manage it, because you have to manage automations at scale. You need to be able to audit it. You need to be able to, because you, the human, wants to know, if I double pay you, how did it happen?
Yeah.
How could that ever happen?
Can I get my money back?
Can I get my money back?
Yeah.
Why did you pay me twice?
If not, how else? Well, let me ask, I want to switch a little bit, if you don't mind, Rob, as we, the arc of this conversation to the human side of leadership. And is the co-CEO arrangement going to continue indefinitely? Or have you talked about this? If you it's working? It's working.
I would honestly have no desire to change it. We get along really, really well. In the last year, after a year, I should be able to know whether this is going to work or not going to work, right? I felt it was going to work when I started. It's probably exceeded my expectation.
Because you have clear, delineated responsibilities?
I wouldn't say we have 100% clear delineation responsibilities. We have interests in what we're doing. Like Daniel will come back with an idea around what's he thinking, and he'll explain it to me, and we'll draw things on little napkins at the restaurant, and I'll say, I don't understand what you're talking about, and I'll force him to go down level until he gets me to understand it. Mm-hmm. Right, so we have that level. I enjoy that as well. So for me, it's intriguing to trying to unwind. Why are you thinking like this? How's it going to help my customers? When I think down 2-3 years, can I see what you're thinking in my customer?
Has his thinking changed at all? I mean,
I think his thinking is
in the last year.
I think he is more excited about the opportunity and how we can infuse AI more and more into the product. We've got exceptionally good AI engineers inside UiPath. We acquired a company in London in July of 2022, where they founded a company at the University College of London. Professor David Barbers actually works for UiPath now. Mm-hmm. He's still running the AI center at UCL. And they brought a bunch of research AI to us, which we never had. Like, you got two kinds of...
Is it transformative in some way?
Absolutely, because that's what they're always thinking. Like, David would tell you he's been doing robotics for 30 years. Hallelujah. It's actually, people understand it. What I've been studying for 30 years, they now get.
Is it Joshua Bengo, whatever the guy in Montreal.
And so that's a lot, because we've got really good applied AI engineers. Like, we have people that know how to build models, know how to build large language, know how to drive algorithms. But when you think about the future and connecting where it's going, and how do you make certain that your technology benefits from that, Daniel's really excited about it. We've got a new product coming out, which is just off the charts cool.
What is it?
Really gonna.
Can you give us a hint?
It's called Clipboard AI.
It's not out yet.
No, we've launched it. We actually showed it at an AI summit last week. But think about it. You look at this big spreadsheet, and it's got columns, and you say, I want that column and that column and that column to go into this document. And you have to cut and paste, and it doesn't fit the right size, and you have to figure this out, and then you got to find where. Well, we built this technology where you can go into any document, look at it, and show it the screen that you want it to populate, and it'll actually go find the information for you and automatically populate it.
Is there a B2C component? Because you're a B2B enterprise company. Mm-hmm. And one of the things about ChatGPT is that there's an excitement now on the consumer end. And look, what's this tax time in the US? I would love to automate that whole process where you don't have to think about it. How much of this could really manifest itself the way, Google, for example, has as being a consumer application?
Well, I'm a huge believer that consumer innovation drives enterprise innovation.
But this seems the reverse, isn't it?
Well, we're utilizing, if you think about what drives enterprise information, there's all kinds of enterprise regulations that you've got to make certain, the data's got to be correct, where input's got to be correct, who's got access to the data, how do you present it to a customer, and the stakes are super, super high. And that's why in the consumer world, you can test it. What would you do if Google search was not available? You'd probably sign another search engine.
Yeah. Bing, and I mean, we're seeing it, the consumer manifestations, but and maybe that's the way it'll play out. What we already use will become better and more automated.
Yeah. But don't think about ChatGPT or OpenAI as the only option in the market. There will be many, many options, and every option will have an opportunity because they'll go deeper and deeper with knowledge and experience. You already got other companies in the market which have large language models which are absolutely brilliant. They just haven't had the marketing yet. So those large language modules will become more and more relevant. Companies will generate their own. They will store it inside an automation where they need specific large language modules. You also, don't forget, the cost of large language modules are absolutely huge today.
And it'll come down.
It will come down, right? But you got to question the affordability of the technology. Like, technology gets cheaper over time and more accessible over time because it becomes better, the utilization becomes better, it becomes more
Moore's
accurate.
Law kind of.
Absolutely. I mean, 4 or 5 years ago, if I got onto my phone and I said, please take me to 25th Street in Manhattan, it wouldn't understand that the South African English I'm talking. Mm-hmm. Today it's perfect. It kind of understands all the different nuances, accents, and you at wonder. The same will happen with AI, with models and stuff like that. They get better over time. Our active learning component on our communication mining understands how companies talk, what kind of culture. So think large bank, large bank, large bank. Every one of them have a different behavior.
Yeah.
We understand that when you're talking to Diane, the bank has to talk that way. Diane might have an account in this bank and that bank. You talk same technology.
Speak in a calm voice or something.
Absolutely, yeah.
Great. Thanks for joining us, Rob.